Last week, Florida State defensive lineman Marvin Wilson disputed head coach Mike Norvell's claims that he had reached out to players individually to discuss the death of George Floyd. Then after a team meeting, Wilson thanked his coach for encouraging him to use his platform to speak out. That led to Friday on Get Up, Desmond Howard saying he is seeing a shift in power in collegiate athletics.
I believe that players are starting to see that the writing is on the wall. They're starting to realize that they're not powerless. For so long, the coaches, the administration, they had all of these players believing that they only had certain rights, their voices couldn't be heard on certain things, and that they couldn't make any money. Now that the players are starting to understand they can make money, or they're going to be able to make money on their name, image, and likeness, and that they have certain powers, I believe you're starting to wake up this sleeping giant. If you're going to be fair and just to your players and treat them accordingly, then you shouldn't have any concerns. You should be okay. But if you're going to treat them unfairly, then watch out, because now they understand they have avenues in which to get information out.
And that was fascinating from him. And then over the weekend, an anonymous ACC player in an article posted to ESPN.com said they're using us players for their entertainment, so we deserve a seat at the table, at the big table. Do we feel like we really have rights as athletes? As of right now, we don't have that. They want us to be quiet because they don't want the university to look bad, but it's too late. The whole country looks bad. Jay Will back with us, and Paul Finebaum joins us this morning. And Paul, we just touched on this a bit on Friday, but we've had some time to think about it. What is your reaction to what Desmond said?
It was extraordinary, and I think what he said is being shown across this country right now, and people can interpret visuals any way they want, but the other day we had a Missouri coach, Eli Drinkwitz, lead players to go vote. Over the weekend, Will Muschamp and Jeremy Pruitt at South Carolina and Tennessee marched with players, Mark Stoops at Kentucky. These are all Southern coaches in Southern states making big statements.
Now, Jay Will, you and I have had conversations about players and whatever power it is they do or don't have a million times over the years, but it's generally always been with regard to money. It has never been about players' ability to speak out on social issues. What do you make of what Desmond said about players taking this power?
I love it, Greeny. You know, it was last year you and I were on TV and we were talking about players wanting to get name, image, and likeness. And, you know, Jalen Rose and I floated out the idea of players boycotting the NCAA in the Final Four. And, you know, that obviously threw a lot of people up in arms, but we recognized the power that the players had with the labor that they were producing on the court. It's free labor. So I think now that guys are understanding, Marvin Wilson of FSU used interesting terminology when he made his quotes via Twitter, when he said, you know, we will not work until further notice. They're looking at this as work, and they understand how valuable they are. And then for him on the back end to come out and say that, hey, look, you know, now we had a great conversation with Coach Norvell. Now we're willing to participate. It's letting you know that, you know, players in 2020, you can no longer hide behind the veil of what you do. You know, they recognize that what happens if there are injustices that are happening internally, by using their platform, they can make those injustices acknowledged by the public, and then you're going to be left up to public scrutiny, and that's a PR nightmare universities do not want.
Paul, I'm going to ask you a complicated question, but do we think that part of the reason this is happening is because players are more aware of the issues in their world than they used to be, or because the circumstances have changed to where they feel that they actually have the power and authority to do these sorts of things, to say these sorts of things and make these sorts of to make these sorts of moves, if you will, whereas they would not have been able to do so in the past?
Greeny, I think the answer is both. I think players are far more aware because of social media, but what's happened in the last couple of weeks has been one of these inflection points in American history that there are very few point of references. Players have tried before, but they haven't really been listened to, and now everyone is listening. And I also think underneath it all, there's an anger in this country about many things, and it's simply rushing to the top. And I think for the first time, coaches are not offering just lip service. In the past, I think that's what they did. Now they're showing, and there's only so much a coach can do right now, other than listen and march with hand in hand with players. But that's a tremendous statement. I mean, I covered college football in the South at a time when black quarterbacks were almost unheard of, and those who came along were often booed and had racial epithets thrown at them. I mean, and to think about that, and I realize we're going back in time, but to look at today in 2020, it's a long time coming.
Yeah, and that sort of leads us directly into these comments that I wanted to show you here next. And this was in a recent interview with the Austin American-Statesman. And the comments are from Tom Herman, the head football coach at Texas, who said, "There's a double standard, maybe a little bit. We're going to pack 100,000 people into DKR and millions watch on TV that are predominantly white. Not all of them, certainly, but most of them white. We're going to cheer when they score touchdowns, or we're going to hug our buddy when they get sacks or an interception. But are we going to let them date our daughter? Are we going to hire them in a position of power in our company? That's the question I have for America. You can't have it both ways. And if you're going to cheer them and love them for 3.5 hours a Saturday in the fall, you better have the same feelings for them off the field, because they're human beings. They deserve the same amount of respect and human rights that all of us do in this country when we agreed on the social contract to be a member of the United States." Let's continue this conversation and bring Domonique Foxworth in for the first time this morning. Neek, thank you as always. And I would love to hear your perspective when you hear the head football coach at Texas say that. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's interesting. It's a good point, but I don't think that they love them, frankly. I think that they look at the players as assets in many respects, because while he says they cheer and they love them, they react when things go poorly in bad ways. As a former college athlete and a former professional athlete, I never felt like the fans actually loved me. Maybe they loved the team or loved what it represented or loved their school or loved their city or whatever that brought them to rooting for this particular team. But I never felt like they loved me, because I know how they treated me when things went poorly. And I know how I've seen the way that Texas fans talk about the players when things don't go well. So if you talk about loving someone, he brought up kids and daughters. I suspect that they don't treat their daughters the way that they treat football players when their daughters or sons disappoint them in that way. So I wouldn't go so far as saying that if you love them then. Maybe they should learn to love them and learn to view them as people and not as property or not as entertainment props or tools. So I appreciate Tom Herman's remarks, but I don't think that they're necessarily all that accurate.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.